Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has by far the most bans in the Pokemon metagame that we have probably ever seen, and now there's a suspect thread for the newest victim, Roaring Moon. It seems as if even though we ban Pokemon and think the metagame is perfect, there is yet again another lingering problem. But I, Chompy, shall go over the metagame most talked about Pokemon and determine if they are worthy to stay in the tier from a rating of scale of 1 to 5. Be sure to leave a like for the safety of Generation 9, and subscribe in hopes that you Ubers will be the saving grace tier to the banned Pokemon problem. Roaring Moon just got put on the suspect list, and this has got me wondering. We'll get to Roaring Moon in a second, but this has actually really got me wondering, what are some other Pokemon that should probably be banned in the Generation 9 Teal Mask DLC metagame? Let's go over through the top Pokemon that are going through major controversies at the moment and rate them on a scale between 1 through 5, whether or not how worthy they should be from ban. 1 being the least amount to be banned, and 5 being the most they should get out of the tier right now. So let's talk about Roaring Moon at the moment. Roaring Moon, as most of you guys know, is a Dragon Dance photosynthesis abuser. So basically the basic idea is you run this under Sun, or you run this with booster energy, right? And your Terra type, flying, or you could do Steel Up defensive if you want to do that, right? But you do photosynthesis, booster energy, and the main set is Dragon Dance, Acrobatics, Dragon Claw, and the last move is really up to you. You can run Roost for recovery, which is actually super helpful in this metagame. Even though the PP is 8, that's all Roaring Moon really needs to keep its health alive and staying on the battlefield. You can run Roost, you can run Taunt against bulky Pokemon like Gliscor or Corviknight, etc. to make them attack you, which actually stops things like Toxic Spikes or undefensive Corviknight, etc. So it makes it a better time for you and your team. You could also run things like EQ, or you could run something like Knockoff, which is something that is blowing apart the tier because of how massive its damage output could be, because it's a stab dark type move that does also more damage if the holder is using an item, which lets it blow through bulky Pokemon like Toxapex or anything else, really Corviknight, I guess. Right, this does major damage. But the real thing with Roaring Moon right now is there's no really specific counterplay. If you guys remember, prior to Baxcalibur's ban, Baxcalibur was actually the #1 Dragon Dance user, and Roaring Moon fell down to like UU or eventually UUBL because of it, because it's a surefire counter to Roaring Moon shenanigans. But now in the tier, there's nothing surefire, and you have to resort to things like Mamoswine, Weavile, etc. that are all down in the UU tier for priority. Ninetales is not going that much faster, etc. Because naturally Roaring Moon anyways outspeeds it. I mean, you could maybe get a Focus Sash, but it's not really wise if you want to run an Icy Rock and then put a Rotovale, etc. So in terms of counterplay, Roaring Moon is actually lacking a lot right now in the moment. Like, it's very weak to physical attackers, but Sucker Punch from Cinderace is not going to do it. Sucker Punch from King Gambit is not going to do it. And if it doesn't have its Dragon Dance, yeah, sure, it will be very vulnerable to Pokemon like Iron Valiant, Booster Energy, and maybe a Namorous Choice Scarf, etc. But the problem is when this thing gets a Dragon Dance, it's pretty much as very narrow counters, if any, to be honest, which is why it's in suspect to go into Ubers. A Pokemon that has very few counters, something like Baxcalibur, for example, which didn't have very few little counters, to be honest, and those type of Pokemon that have very few counters tend to be Pokemon that are really suspected into Ubers. If you remember, bloodmoon Ursaluna is another similar example of this. The only real clear-cut counter was Blissey, which, by the way, this thing is not staying in OU, by the way, before you guys even get your heads up. This thing is not staying in OU. It is way too weak on the physical side with a lot of great physical attackers in the moment. That aside, right? So, for example, like bloodmoon Ursaluna, other than Blissey, and Blissey was an okay counter at the best, but this thing was able to still roughshot around the tier, and there was no counter because of its ability Mind's Eye, and once it gets a Calm Mind, and it has Moonlight to heal up, and then it's got Blood Moon for massive damage plus with Earth Power. It was a GG. It's a similar case with here. You could either run Knockoff, you could even probably take out Knockoff, you put Roost if you want, right? Acrobatics, Dragon Claw, make it Terra Flying, or you get a Acrobatics and put Knockoff, etc. Knockoff, Dragon Claw, D-Dance, Roost, and keep this thing going live. It's pretty strong in the moment. You still got things like Dondozo on the physical side with Unaware, etc., who could probably stop things from Dragon Dance and all that, but there's only a certain amount of time, because Dondozo, it doesn't even have that much good reliable recovery other than Leftovers and Rest and Chesto Berry. Overall, with the ban of Baxcalibur, in my opinion, I think this has really bolstered its viability once more, because now there's no clear-cut counter to really stop it, and Knockoff has really let it blown open the doors because it's able to run through bulky Pokemon. So on a scale 1 through 5, how bannable should it be? I don't like how we're banning everything in OU. This is just a aside, right? But I don't like how we're banning a lot of things in OU. I understand the reasoning behind it, but if you compare it to something like Ubers, for example, I think that does a perfect job of incorporating Pokemon that are not being really used in Ubers, and maybe that could shift how OU really works. Shameless plug, by the way. If you guys are interested in Ubers, the Discord link is down below. The community is awesome. It's been great. There's a tournament next week, and I'm sponsoring as well. There's a prize pool, I think, of $150 50, something like that. So be sure to go check that out. Again, it makes me curious how Roaring Moon would do if it had like better Pokemon that are in the OU tier, but frankly, that's not the case, and this Pokemon's we banned right into Ubers probably. I think out of 1 to 5, I think it's a 4. It's pretty alarming right now what's happening in the metagame. I think that's where it should be at the moment. I think there could be probably more pressing matters, which I'll get to in a sec. Next up, I want to talk about Gliscor. So Gliscor has been in the talks to being banned, primarily because it's super annoying on many teams, and I'm going to be straight up right now, on a scale of 1 to 5, I do not think this thing needs to be banned. This thing is probably like 2 at most 1. I understand the implications of what is happening in the metagame right now. Overall, because of its like insane poison heal, toxic orb ability, it can go, it's a really good spike setter. Oh yeah, actually I should probably put spikes. So spikes, EQ, you don't even need EQ for like toxic, then you put like EQ here and you not have knockoff, etc. There's so many different sets to run with this. My personal favorite, I think toxic spikes really does a hamper on it, because if you put toxic spikes in a poison type user who comes in to get rid of it, or even a rapid spin user, you can catch them on it and deal good damage with either knockoff or EQ, which is really good in my opinion. So spikes, toxic spikes, toxic, it's called goons like that, or knockoff like I put before, right? So this is a pretty valid moveset. This is where it really goes around. Now this Pokemon's just annoying because like its usability. As a ground and flying type, now it's taken up as the #1 probably like ground and flying type user over Landorus Therian, and it's been really good as of it. It's able to stand there, and funny enough, it's actually able to run facade sets. Oops, not poison. Facade sets with sword stance and facade. Granted, it's not the most powerful thing in the world because you still have Terra Normal. You're also not the fastest thing in the world with base 95 speed. Sure, you're physically bulky, but that special defense is really lacking. And with a tier with like things like Iron Valiant or Enamorus or like Dragapult, Manaphy, etc. level 9 tails, it's not gonna last that long as a Terra Normal user. But nevertheless, it's still a nice option. I think it's a 2 because it's more of a glue piece. I see it in more of the vein of like the Tusk line or the Landorus Therian or the Tinglu or anything that sort of vein. Like it's supposed to, like Dragapult, maybe I don't know, Dragapult's more in its own niche, but in my opinion I think Gliscor serves as that like a glue piece on many teams. It's sure it's very annoying to put, but to put it like, in my opinion, I think Pokemon that should be banned to Ubers are Pokemon that don't have clear-cut counters. Gliscor does have clear-cut counters. It's just annoying to obviously get them in. It's annoying to deal with Gliscor when you're not playing properly. It's annoying to deal with Gliscor when the wrong lead's out. It's annoying to deal with Gliscor when the wrong Pokemon's out, etc. Right? I think we should calm down on Gliscor. Like, hey, I think there's a lot more pressing matters that need to be probably dealt with than Gliscor. Gliscor does have counters. Gliscor does have counterplay. It sure is annoying, but it's a really solid glue piece that I think people are just like kind of overrating because of how annoying it is to deal with. The next one I want to talk about is maybe not oggerpon. Well, let's talk about Manaphy, right? So Manaphy is another Pokemon that people want to be banned from the Generation 9 metagame, and the reason is terrestrialization. Really, it really covers up its defensive weaknesses when it has water, because it's weak to like electric and stuff, but now it can tear it into like grass, for example, and avoid all of that. It can tear into grass, probably tear into fairy, etc. 2 sets that are really come to my mind is Stored Power, and then you got also the Take Heart set. So let me go over this one first. You got like Scald, Tail Glow, Acid Armor, Stored Power. You can even remove Tail Glow for like if you want like Take Heart, or you could put Calm Mind, etc. Whatever you really want. And this thing can be bulky because it's got base 100 across the board, which is not anything special out of the blue, but it's also not anything that's bad, right? Base 100 across the board is still pretty solid. It's 100 across the board. Like you can't go really that wrong with it. And with terrestrialization types, it can cover up its defensive like weaknesses and keep it going in the tier, which in my opinion it is a bit of a pain. And this set is really strong. I mean, of course, like it's weak to like dark types, especially like Greninja, who can probably King Gamut, like which really walls it, like if it's not careful, at least if it doesn't get burned from Scald. He's still got things like Roaring Moon, which could use it as an easy access like venture point because it still has the special defense. Got things like Hisui and Samurott that can do like free ceaseless edges and stuff. So this set isn't like the strongest set, but in my opinion what is probably a better set is probably its Take Heart, more offensive set. You could run like Scald or whatever, Hydro Pump. You could run like Energy Ball, and then you got things like Dazzling Gleam. And this set is really good because it cannot be status. It raises attack and special defense and special attack, excuse me. And then it's got its good coverage moves as well, and you can tear type to whatever you want. Again, it's the same mindset. It's basically another bulky attacker, and it's just basically stronger because of the advent of terrestrialization, which can boost whatever it really wants. It can be Terra Water as well and just do more damage with Scald. The only problem with Manaphy though, there is something that's even stronger in tier. And by the way, Manaphy, in my opinion, I think again, it's a 2 right now. And the reason is because you got things like Oggerpon Wellspring, which has water absorb, and with grass and water as well, it's pretty able to negate most of what Manaphy wants to do on the offensive set, relatively speaking, especially with this grass type. Horn Leech, Ivy Cudgel, Sword Sense, Superpower, that's a pretty solid set, and you get a fast physical sweeper. This thing, in my opinion, from a scale to 1 to 5, it's basically a 3 rating in my opinion. I don't think it's that strong, but I also don't feel like it should be banned. I understand people's sentiments about, oh, you know, it's so strong, once it gets the Sword Sense up, it's pretty much unstoppable. There's not really clear-cut counters, etc. Grass and water does have clear-cut counters. It's weak to flying especially, and can still take solid neutral damage from a lot of the tier. What makes Roaring Moon unstoppable is because once it gets one setup, which is I guess is the problem with it, like it has to get a setup in order to be unstoppable. Oggerpon doesn't really need to have a setup. It can still do solid damage when it terrestrializes or it has his mask essentially, because it's all of its attacks is 1.2 times power in all of everything with like Horn Leech, IV Cudgel, Superpower, Knockoff, etc. So that's gonna be really good. And when it terrestrializes, it gets a plus special defense boost, which honestly is the only thing that's probably making it from unbroken, because unlike with Heartflame, which gets a plus attacking boost, which actually boosts offensive pressure, this thing only really boosts defensive pressure, which isn't bad by any means, but like I think in my opinion probably stops a lot of what it was doing. Now Oggerpon does stop Pokemon that can be really good in the tier as well, like a Lomomola, which like if it runs into Oggerpon, it can be having a tough time because it's really a mono water Pokemon. You got things like Greninja that can really be stopped in strikes, and Polion again, who gets completely decimated by Oggerpon, like essentially. And other water type like Manaphy, again, like I mentioned before, Manaphy, like if you can't get a Scald off, like an Energy Ball won't do that much to it, and Dazzling Gleam or like Psychic, or whatever you want to put on it, it's not gonna do as much. You can even run Ice Beam, but Oggerpon can still come in, even go for like a Horn Leech or something to that effect, and like terrestrialize it to like water to even negate the Ice type like neutrality. So yeah, Manaphy in my opinion should not be banned. It's a Manaphy, what is it, like a 2, 3, something like that. Oggerpon's probably like a 3, maybe 4. I don't know. I don't think the thing should be banned. I honestly like it in the tier. It's not too overpowering. Anyways, the next Pokemon I want to talk about is our boy Kingambit. Now, Kingambit has been in the talks for such a long time, whether this thing should be banned or not. I personally think it's probably like a 4.5. And the reason is because terrestrialization, and I'm not a fan of when the Terra is unpredictable. Granted, like, and when I'm using it, like, it's fun, but like when I'm against it, it's anything but fun. And what I mean with that, for like Kingambit, for example, so let's just run its usual set, like black glasses. This is the most typical set you'd probably run. You can take off Iron Head for like low kick, but like neither here or there. Tomato auto, right? You can run whatever you want, at least for that 4th move slot. But the other 3 Sword Stance, Kowtow, Cleavage, Sucker Punch are completely like always there. Now this is where it's a bit difficult if you're the opponent. If let's say you are down to the last Pokemon, it's Kingambit versus your opponent's whatever. Your opponent thinks you're going to be Terra Dark, so they go for like a fighting type move, where a fighting type move will be super effective, but they don't know actually, excuse me, that you're Terra Flying, and Terra Flying here now negates the fighting type weakness, and now you're able to get like a free Sword Stance or a Sucker Punch coming off a Supreme Overlord, which gives probably a 50% boost in power now because all 5 eyelads are gone. So you're going to deal massive damage, priority, and plus black glasses, which gives a 1.2 times power to its Sucker Punch. Now you're talking about like it's unpredictable. Oh, but what if they predict the flying type? Well, this thing still has other Terra types you can run. Terra Fire. You can run Terra Fire. You can run Terra Dark for just more boosted, just disgusting Sucker Punch damage, right? You got Terra Fairy just in general to avoid all of that, even though it's like going to be weak to ground type moves, but nevertheless, you still got that as an option, right? You got like Terra Steel, Terra Water. There's so many Terra types this thing can run, which makes it a bit elusive. And for a slow Pokemon, like 50 base speed for Kingambit, you think of anything but elusive. But Terra types have made this thing completely sometimes like unpredictable near the end of the games, and I feel like it kind of gives a similar yearly reward to what when Houndstone still had Last Respects, where all it had to do is come in at the end of games, have Sand Rush, and just hit Last Respects, which is like Choice Band or whatever, and keep spamming and spamming and spamming that because it's so strong at the end of the games, and it's just like no skill. I feel like Kingambit is a type of Pokemon that really rewards losing, and I feel like without Terra type, this thing would have no problem. I think people who would be complaining about it is just being crybabies, and it's like whatever, right? But the advent of terrestrialization is the only reason why I think this Pokemon is so elusive on this end, which makes it very difficult to predict what you want to do on the opponent's side. And I don't think this is healthy at all in the metagame. Now, I mean, personally, I love using it, but relatively speaking, as an objective, like just looking at the tier, I don't think it's healthy. I think this should have been gone personally before the DLC. I'm surprised it lasted this long. It should probably go soon, in my opinion. Next up is Goldango. I made a video about this literally last time, so I'm not going to go super in depth of whether Goldango should be in the tier or not, because I don't want to be super redundant when I make that video. If you guys want to check or not what I said about Goldango, be sure to check that video. Goldango is pretty good, not because of its offensive set, not because of its defensive morality, not because it's dealing, well, partially because it's Ghost type. It's because of good as gold, and that's completely what comes down to this. This thing blocks status moves like the Fog, actually that's like the main thing, right? And because of its Ghost typing, it blocks Rapid Spin, and even Pokemon that can predict when it's coming in and go for a ground type move is going to run Air Balloon, so it completely avoids everything that you want to do to this thing. And the only reliable thing you can do is maybe go for like a knockoff from like Roaring Moon, right, and really get on that switch. But realistically speaking, this thing is critically essential to the hazard game. Toxic Spikes has been really good because of Gliscor now and Ceaseless Edge Hamrod, And guess what? The only Pokemon that's in OU because of Goldango is literally because of Ribombee. This thing would not be in OU otherwise, because like you could probably get rid of like sticky webs and stuff like that. But this Pokemon is really only good because of sticky webs, and you can run whatever moves you want for the last 3 moves. But sticky webs for Ribombee, because it's the fastest sticky webs users in the tier, it's the only legitimate reason why that Pokemon's even in the tier, or even for consideration to be in OU. Hazards, it's a problem. You know, it's everywhere. I think out of every Pokemon, I think it's a 3.54 whether it should not be banned, and it's literally only because the advent of hazards. Again, if we had a similar tier to Ubers where hazards isn't the same like problem as it is like here, it might be, in my opinion, might be switched. But because there's so few hazard removals with like Great Tusk, who's getting harder and harder to use for hazard removal, and then you get a Core Change Cinderace, and then you got maybe like Defog Corviknight as the best option. Corviknight gets completely walled by Goldango. It's not even, it's a laughing matter when you even mention that. But an OU with few counters and few Pokemon that are able to like be like, hey, Goldango, you're not gonna do much. Even if you come on a switch, you're completely gone, just like massacre it. There's not that many Pokemon that can really do that, and because it's still relatively bulky compared to the rest of the tier, still can do massive amounts of damage, and good as gold is still good as gold, and it's still got things like recovery. I think again, it really comes down to the power level in the tier, and that's why it's actually really talked about. But anyways, these are the what 6 Pokemon that I want to talk about that should be, whether or not should be banned in the tier. Pokemon that should be banned: Roaring Moon and King Gambit. Those are the highest ratings in my opinion that should be banned. Goldango, it's on the fence on whether it should be banned. I feel like it's probably like climbing the fence, and probably it's going to get over the fence sooner or later. Manaphy is looking at the fence, you know, staring at the fence. You don't know. Oggerpon is starting to climb it, but I don't think it should be banned. I think, man, I don't know. I don't think these two should be completely banned yet, but maybe I'm wrong, and you guys can let me know in the comments below. Gliscor is far from it. It's on the outskirts. It's eating popcorn on the couch. It's not going to be banned anytime soon. So that's where I'm coming up with. Anyways, be sure to let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. Thank you to my members for the continued support. Be sure to join the Chompy Discord, and until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video, probably between Friday and Sunday, although editing's been a bit slow because of schoolwork, but I'll get there, trust. Anyways, catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching as always.